Yesterday, the news came out from America that Ralph Martin and another professor had been fired from a university in Detroit. Ralph Martin is part of the Charismatic Renewal Ministries. And while I tend to want to avoid commenting on American Catholicism because, there's already enough commentators on this. There's one thing I did find interesting about Ralph Martin was his book, The Fulfillment of All Desire, which was published a few years ago. And I read this in the space of a month back, 2-3 years ago, end to end, very quickly. Thought it was beautifully put together. When was it published? It was published in 2006, and this is the 22nd printing. So this book has been massively popular in the church that Ralph Martin has written. And while he's involved in the charismatic movement, it was very traditional. I mean, if you look at, he speaks about the fruits of union in chapter 16, and he heavily quotes, when he speaks about the fruits of union, he heavily quotes from John the Cross and Bernard of Clairvaux, Catherine of Siena, etc., etc. Bernard of Clairvaux, John of the Cross. John of the Cross is so, and Teresa of Avila are heavily quoted during the whole book, and it really gave some food to think about, this book. As I said, it's interesting. It's interesting that on the one hand he is clearly part of the charismatic movement, and on the other hand he is talking about union with God, and he specifically mentions the transformational process of union with God. It's here. He has it here. Transforming union, part 3. And what is the problem in the church today is a problem of theology, that we are failing to understand this process of transforming union. And this process of transforming union is a process of two wills converging. And so it's a process of conversion, and we need to know what we need to stop doing and what we need to start doing. We can't live in both worlds. We need to allow ourselves to be guided on this process of transforming union. Anyway, I just thought the book was extremely well written. I would even read it again. I thought it was so well. So yes, I suppose where I'm coming from here is the Archbishop Edward Weisenburger, and I'm not going to get in. I don't want to get into the church politics on this, at all. But if you have a professor so well known as Ralph Martin, teaching in a seminary for 23 years, and the Archbishop calls him in and fires him and gives him a very vague explanation about concerns over theological perspectives, that is raising a lot of red flags for me. Okay, well, what are the concerns over theological perspectives? Because you have a worldwide audience that reads his books, that are nourished by his books. And if the church has concerns over theological perspectives, well, could we not know what these theological perspectives are that he has concerns over? Because this isn't any seminary professor. He's a well-known author and writer, respected around the world. So many people follow his videos. I mean, I never saw him being anybody other than somebody who loves the church. He comes across somebody that deeply loves the faith. I didn't see him as some, radical Catholic here trying to, cause division in the church. I just saw somebody here that is deeply in love with the faith. I mean, and on the opening part of this book, Ralph Martin speaks about having read St. John of the Cross and not understanding St. John of the Cross. And I think he's in Zurich airport, and all of a sudden, however, he says, now, however, in an airport in Zurich in 1993, as I read the spiritual canticle, it was as if I was blinded by an excess of light and insight, As I read, I felt that everything I had ever experienced, felt and desired and longed for and strove to understand had been revealed to me in a depth of understanding and measure of beauty and meaning that literally took my breath away. It was the right book at the right time. I mean, I suppose that who writes a 430-page book on union with God, because this is what Ralph Martin is speaking about, the transformational process of union with God. Who writes this and gets it printed? How many, as I said, this has been printed 27 or 22 times, printing since 2006. Who writes this? And all of a sudden, somebody is coming along and saying, no, Ralph, you've got it wrong. Your theological perspective is wrong here. Well, point it out to Ralph and to us so that we can understand, well, where are we going wrong in the church? Where are we going wrong? Because if we're on the wrong path, it's good to be corrected. I would like to know if I was on the wrong path. And people often say I'm on the wrong path and such a point, and so that's okay. And then you can study up and correct your path. But I suppose I think many Catholics are asking the same question. If a professor in a seminary forming priests for 23 years has wrong theological perspectives, name them, point them out so that people could correct them. I thought, gosh, I'd hate to work in the church and after 20 years to be fired and to be given a good explanation. Well, we're firing you because of this, and this, and this. You're not Catholic in your teaching on these points, and so we've decided to let you go. Maybe allow him to be able to defend himself and to correct it. I suppose there's probably more to this story than meets the eye. But guys, this is an interesting book, in my opinion. Ralph Martin clearly understands the transformational process to union with God, or has actually studied it. And he speaks, I did a video yesterday on the fruits of union. He actually speaks about this in one of his chapters. If you go to part 3, he talks about the fruits of union from page 385 onwards. And this is fascinating. I really like this. Quoting Bernardo Clairvaux, doctors of the church, many saints and doctors of the church, speaking about the fruits of union: fruitfulness and work, an immense fortitude, continual prayer, sensitivity to others, contemplation and action, apostolic fruitfulness. And he says, John remarks that a little of this pure love is more precious to God and the soul and more beneficial to the church, even though it seems one is doing nothing, than all these other works put together. After all, this love is the end for which we are created. He gives a very practical exhortation to those who think that apostolic work can be fruitful without giving the primacy to grace, to prayer, and to the journey towards union. As I said, this theology of this transformational process to union with God is what we need to bring out into the church. And so many writers are speaking about it, and people are speaking about it. We can do nothing if we're not united to God, and we can do nothing if we're not truly transformed by God. Because if you try to do something and you haven't gone through the spiritual process of union with God, and you're trying to do apostolic work in the church, Satan will create mincemeat out of you. And again, 33 years I have seen so many personal friends of mine go into the priesthood, go into seminary, go into religious life with so much zeal and love for the church, only to fall. And what is the problem here is we have formators, men, leaders, superiors, who do not have union with God, trying to form men to be priests in the church, but haven't gone through the the process to union with God. Clear example, Father Martial, Legion of Christ. Clear example. And others in the church. We look at, in the diocese of Fréjus Toulon, men trying to get themselves ordained or men doing apostolic work only to fail and fall over. And I give that example because of what I know that happened in there. And, guys, look, the church needs to shake itself up a little bit here. The purpose of the spiritual life, what Christ is trying to do, is to unite us to him. That process of theosis, deification, union with God. And it's from that position that we can have fruits in the church, in our apostolic life, in the priesthood. But failing to arrive there, and then trying to lead souls and help souls, it's the blind leading the blind. It sincerely is. And so if there's errors, if there's theological errors in Ralph Martin's writings and talks and so, it'd be good if the church could point them out. International writer that many of us respect. Very traditional in my opinion. But if there are errors there, it'd be good so that we can say, okay, well now we can understand the errors and maybe build on them, and he's got a chance to correct them. Again, as I said, the crisis in the church is a crisis of theology at this moment in time. A theology that has been sidetracked by this synodal nonsense. Christ left a deposit of the faith. He didn't leave a group of apostles who went out and started, well, what do you think we should be doing? What do you think we should be doing? Mass is boring, we should do this. And when I see the nonsense, and I say it call it out for what it is, nonsense of what this synodal process is and has been doing over the last number of years. Nonsense. Have you lost the run of yourselves in the church? Christ came to give a very simple message. Christ came to transform us, and he left clear guidance. A deposit of the faith, which is there for what? To guide. And shepherds are there to what? To guide. But, we've ended up where we've ended up. And, maybe it'll take a while for the church to come to its senses. We seem to want to pander to every woke position that the world has to offer us. Instead of saying, look, here, we're going to give you an unpopular teaching. But let's face it, the apostles were all killed. Every single one of them, bar John, the youngest. They were all killed for giving an unpopular position. The faith is, the path to union with God is not easy. But it does fulfill, as the title of the book, it is the fulfillment of all desire. That is what union with God ultimately is. And it's a process of change that's not easy for us. It's a process of leaving one way of living and starting to live in another way of living. So, guys, I asked a simple question here without going on too long. If Ralph Martin has wrong theological perspectives, then we need to know about them. Can somebody give us a clear, concise document on what are these wrong theological perspectives? I'm sure the priests and seminarians that have been formed under him for 23 years might be interested in knowing them. Exactly, precisely, call out exactly, point by point, what are these perspectives that are wrong? I think anybody that has, anybody that has been, I mean, I would hate to be in his position, having worked for so many years in that position, and to be fired. You know, I would feel aggrieved, and I would want to know, okay, like our Lord, what exactly has been done wrong here? You know, again, as I said in many videos, I'm not a member of the charismatic movement at all, but I like his book and his writings and his videos. I found it fascinating and very interesting. His extensive knowledge of John the Cross, Teresa of Avila, Teresa of Lisieux, Bernard of Clairvaux. I mean, his vast knowledge was very, very educational for me. It really is. And he hit on exactly the key point. The end of what God is trying to do is to unite us to him, to introduce us into the love that he wants to pour out into our hearts. I mean, it's an experience of love, a soul experience of love. The universal call to holiness in Lumen Gentium is what? What is the universal call to holiness that has been so debated, if not other than union with God? And are we going to try to reinvent what our Lord tried to do with us? We're selling God short in the church. We are selling him short. Reducing him down to what? You sit over there, Christ, and we'll call on you when we need you, but we're off doing our own stuff here. The purpose of the faith, the purpose of the church is to introduce us into the love of the Trinity. And if you don't understand this and you think it's all pie in the sky, well, sadly, there's nothing more I can say. But that's what Christ came to do, to transform us. And this is a spiritual journey of renunciation and acceptance of something truly spiritual and divine. I mean, it breaks my heart to see what we've done in the church. But again, I've no leadership position. I have no ministry as such. I'm a simple blogger with a camera, and people might take my videos as you wish. But I really do think we are selling ourselves short here. And if such a prominent author, this book, if it has been printed so many times, how many people have read it? And people are asking, okay, if he has wrong theological perspectives, could we know what they are? Explain to us. You know, we have Father Robert Farisi, Jesuit, who recommends his book, Father Raniero Cantalamessa, Father Benedict Groeschel, who has promoted this book before he died, obviously. And again, I thought the book was extremely well researched. And Ralph Martin clearly understands what God is trying to do in our spiritual life, which is union with him. Transforming union. The unitive way. And so if he's gotten something wrong, let us know. Maybe it's not. Yeah. Anyway, God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.